The massive transport ship slowed as it approached the gleaming space station. Inside, Alan Carter clutched his duffel bag tighter and tried to calm his racing heart. Through the viewport, he could see the famous rings of the Galactic Defense Academy spinning slowly against the backdrop of stars. This was it, the moment he had worked his whole life for. Alan was among the first humans ever admitted to the Academy. It had been less than 5 years since Earth made contact with the Galactic Alliance, and most aliens still saw humans as backward primitives. The only reason they even allowed humans to apply was because of the shocking battle at Jupiter's moons, where Earth's small defense fleet somehow defeated a Vex Confederation scouting force. The other passengers on the transport, mostly aliens, from advanced civilizations, kept their distance from him. Alan noticed a group of tall reptilian figures watching him from across the passenger bay. Their scales gleamed under the lights, and their eyes narrowed when they saw him looking back. Craxus. The dominant military power in the sector, Alan had studied everything he could about them before leaving Earth. They were naturally armored, stronger than humans, and had been spacefaring for over 10,000 years while humans were still figuring out basic agriculture. The transport docked with a soft thud. A voice announced something in Standard Galactic, and Alan fumbled with his translator earpiece. By the time he got it working, most of the other passengers were already filing out. "Move, human," a harsh voice said behind him. "Or do your primitive legs not work properly?" Alan turned to see one of the Craxus towering over him. This one wore cadet insignia like his own, but the markers on his uniform showed high family status. "I'm moving," Alan said, trying to keep his voice steady. He shouldered his bag and joined the line of new cadets heading toward the processing area. The Academy station was designed for dozens of different species, with gravity that could be adjusted in different sections. For now, it was set at a standard that felt about 20% heavier than Earth normal. Alan's muscles already ached as he walked. After processing, a holographic guide led the new cadets on a tour. Alan tried to memorize the layout of the station as they moved through training areas, dormitories, and simulation chambers. The technology was unlike anything he had seen on Earth. "This is the combat arena," the guide announced as they entered, a massive circular room. "Here you will test your physical abilities against other cadets." Alan swallowed hard. Combat training was required for all students, regardless of specialization. He had trained extensively before leaving Earth, but he knew the physical advantages other species had. "First day assessment begins in 1 hour," the guide continued. "Report to your assigned quarters to store your belongings and change into training uniforms." Alan's room was small but private. After changing into the gray Academy training uniform, he sat on his bunk and reviewed the orientation materials on his datapad. The statistics were not encouraging. Out of the 12 humans who had been accepted to the Academy so far, 5 had already dropped out. The assessment bell chimed too soon. Alan made his way to the combat arena, where about 50 new cadets had gathered. They came in all shapes and sizes, some with multiple limbs, others with exoskeletons or bioluminescent skin. The Academy grouped cadets by general physical classification rather than species, and Alan had been placed in bipedal group C. An instructor, a 4-armed alien with blue skin, called for attention. "Today, we evaluate your baseline abilities," the instructor said. "This is not a competition, merely an assessment of where each of you starts your training." Despite these words, Alan could feel the tension in the room. Every cadet wanted to make a good first impression. The Craxus cadet who had spoken to Alan on the transport stood nearby with several others of his kind. His uniform now displayed his name, Zark Thal. The group of Craxus were talking quietly, occasionally glancing at the other cadets with what looked like amusement. The assessment began with basic strength tests. Alan performed adequately, but nowhere near the top of the group. The Craxus, with their powerful muscles, dominated this section easily. Zarkthal lifted weights that would have crushed a human, doing so with apparent ease. Next came speed trials. Here Alan did better, finishing in the top third. His time in track and field back on Earth had paid off. The endurance test was where Alan truly stood out. The cadets had to run laps in increasing gravity, One by one, cadets dropped out as the gravity increased. To Alan's surprise, he outlasted many aliens, including several Kraxus. Only Zarkthal and a few others remained when Alan finally had to stop. Zarkthal studied him with renewed interest after that, but not in a friendly way. The final test was hand-to-hand combat. Cadets were paired off to demonstrate basic fighting skills. Alan was matched against a cadet from a species he didn't recognize, humanoid but with gray skin and 4 fingers on each hand. Their match ended quickly, with Alan on his back after a swift takedown. He got up, thanked his opponent as protocol required, and stepped off the mat. As he was walking back to the observation area, Zarkthal stepped into his path. "Not bad endurance for a primate," Zarkthal said, loud enough for others to hear. "Though I suppose running from predators is in your species' recent memory." Several cadets laughed. Alan kept his face neutral. "Thank you," he said simply, trying to step around the larger cadet. Zarkthal moved to block him. "I'm curious, human. What made you think you belong here? This academy has trained the greatest warriors in the galaxy for centuries. My father is Fleet Admiral Kazan, commander of the 3rd Expeditionary Force. My bloodline goes back to the founders of the Kraxus Dominion." Zarkthal spread his arms, indicating the high-tech facility around them. "All this was built by advanced species while your kind was still discovering fire. What could you possibly contribute?" The room had gone quiet. Even the instructors were watching now, curious to see how the human would respond to this challenge. Alan thought about the briefing all human cadets had received before departing Earth. "Don't rise to provocations," his commander had said. "Some species see emotional control as weakness, others as strength. Best to show them humans can keep cool heads." "I'm here to learn," Alan said evenly. "Same as you." Zarkthal's yellow eyes narrowed. "You're here because the Alliance Council took pity on your world after that lucky victory at Jupiter. Don't mistake charity for respect, human." With that, he turned away dismissively, rejoining his Kraxus companions. An instructor called for the next combat pairing, and the moment passed. But Alan could feel the eyes of the other cadets on him as he moved to the sidelines. First impressions mattered here, and now he was marked, not just as a human but as someone even the other cadets saw as unworthy. As the assessment concluded, Alan checked his datapad for his class assignments. His first tactical simulation would be tomorrow morning. He had much to prepare and little time to prove that humanity deserved its place among the stars. Alan woke before his alarm. The unfamiliar hum of the space station and the slightly higher gravity made sleep difficult. He checked his schedule again. Tactical simulation at 0800 hours. This was his chance to show his real skills. Back on Earth, Alan had scored in the top percentile on all tactical tests. While he might not have the physical advantages of other species, humans had proven surprisingly good at strategy and quick thinking. At least, that's what his instructors had told him. He dressed quickly in his cadet uniform and headed to the meal hall. Most of the tables were designed for specific species, some extremely tall, others close to the ground. Alan found the section meant for roughly human-sized bipeds and collected a tray of food. The nutrition specialists had done their best to create something humans could eat, but the result was a gray paste that tasted vaguely like oatmeal mixed with fish. Alan forced it down, knowing he would need the energy. "Mind if I join you?" Alan looked up to see another cadet standing nearby. She wasn't human. Her skin had a slight purple tint and her eyes were larger, but she was close enough, in appearance, that they could almost pass as the same species. "Please," Alan said, gesturing to the empty seat. "I'm Nira," she said, sitting down. "A Streety from the Vega system." "Alan Carter, human, Earth." Nira nodded. "I saw you during assessment yesterday. You did well in the endurance test." "Thanks. Not so great at everything else." "That's normal for new species at the Academy," she said between bites of her own meal, which looked similar to Alan's but was deep blue. "My people joined the Alliance 50 years ago. The first generation of cadets struggled too." "How many of them made it through?" Alan asked. "About half," she said. Then, seeing his expression, she added, "But the success rate improved significantly. With each new class, We learn how to adapt. Alan was about to ask more when his datapad buzzed with a notification. The tactical simulation had been moved up 30 minutes. He had to leave now. Good luck today, Nira called as he hurried away. And watch out for the Craxus in your group. The simulation chamber was a large, circular room with 20 stations arranged in a ring. Each station had a chair with neural interfaces and a holographic display. Cadets were already filing in and finding their assigned positions. Alan checked the display board and found his name, Station 12. As he approached, he saw with a sinking feeling that Zarkthal was assigned to Station 1. The lead position, even. Worse, a group of senior officers had entered an observation booth above the simulation floor. Among them was a Craxus wearing a fleet admiral's insignia. Judging by his resemblance to Zarkthal, this had to be his father, Admiral Kazan. Cadets, attention, called the simulation instructor, a tall, thin alien with 6 eyes. Today's exercise will test your ability to work as a coordinated fleet. You will be divided into 2 teams of 10, competing against each other in a battle simulation. The instructor tapped a control panel, and the stations lit up either blue or red. Alan's station turned blue. So did Zarkthal's. Cadet Zarkthal will command the blue team. Cadet Vorlak will command the red team. The instructor continued. Your objective is to eliminate the opposing fleet while minimizing your own losses. The simulation uses realistic physics and weapon systems. Alan sat down at his station and placed his hands on the neural interface pads. The chair adjusted to his body, and a holographic display appeared before him showing a small scout ship. Not the most powerful vessel, but quick and maneuverable. Blue team, communications check. Zarkthal's voice came through Alan's headset. 1. By 1, the blue team members responded. When it was Alan's turn, he said clearly, Station 12 online. There was a pause before Zarkthal responded. Ah, the human. I hadn't noticed you were on my team. The simulation began with the blue and red fleets appearing at opposite ends of a star system. Between them was an asteroid field and a nebula cloud that blocked sensors. Standard Craxus formation Delta, Zarkthal ordered. Carter, you take the rear guard position. Alan studied the formation on his display. The rear guard position would keep him far from the action. Basically a wasted slot, but he moved his ship into position without complaint. As the blue fleet moved forward, Alan noticed something about the asteroid field. The patterns weren't random. They were moving in a way that suggested hidden currents or gravitational anomalies. He had seen similar situations in Earth simulations. Commander, Alan said over the comm, I'm detecting unusual movement in the asteroid field. It might be. Maintain communications discipline. Zarkthal cut him off. Follow orders and stay. In formation. The blue fleet continued forward. From the observation booth, Alan could feel the eyes of the admirals watching their every move. This simulation was clearly more important than a typical training exercise. Suddenly, the red team's ships emerged from the nebula, taking an unexpected approach vector. They had split their forces into 3 smaller groups, using the nebula's cover to set up a pincer movement. Evasive action, Zarkthal ordered. Form defensive screen around the capital ships. The blue team scrambled to respond, but their rigid formation made it difficult to adapt quickly. 2 of their ships were quickly targeted and eliminated from the simulation. Alan watched as Zarkthal tried to rally the team, barking orders that followed classic Craxus battle doctrine. But the red team's unorthodox approach had thrown him off balance. From his position at the rear, Alan could see the entire battlefield. The asteroid field was now directly between the 2 fleets, and its strange movements were creating gaps and clusters that neither team was using effectively. Commander, Alan tried again. If we use the asteroid field's gravitational eddies, we could— Silence! Zarkthal snapped. The human thinks he can teach Craxus battle tactics. Just maintain your position. But Alan's position was becoming untenable. The red team had noticed his isolated scout ship and was sending 2 cruisers to eliminate him. If he stayed in formation as ordered, he would be destroyed within moments. In the observation booth, Admiral Kazan leaned forward, watching intently as the human cadet situation became desperate. Alan made a decision. Instead of retreating or trying to fight the approaching cruisers, He turned his small scout ship directly toward the densest part of the asteroid field, a move that appeared suicidal to everyone watching. "Carter, what are you doing?" Zarkthal demanded. "Return to formation immediately." Alan didn't respond. He was too focused on piloting his ship through the asteroids at speeds that the simulation warned were dangerous. But he had noticed something no one else had. The gravitational patterns created a hidden pathway through the field, like a river flowing through rocks. The cruisers pursuing him tried to follow, but couldn't match his precise navigation. One clipped an asteroid and spun, out of control. The other pulled back, unwilling to risk destruction. On the other side of the asteroid field, Alan's scout ship emerged directly behind the Red Team's main force. They were completely focused on Zarkthal's struggling fleet and didn't notice the small blue signature appearing on their flank. With no other choice now, Alan prepared to make his move. The simulation was about to take an unexpected turn. Alan's scout ship hovered silently behind the Red Team's main fleet. His sensors showed him their complete formation, 5 capital ships protected by 3 destroyers, with their remaining vessels engaged with Zarkthal's forces. No one had noticed him yet. In the observation booth, Admiral Kazan leaned forward with interest. The other officers were murmuring among themselves. No cadet had ever used the asteroid field in quite this way before. Alan knew he had one chance to make a difference. His small scout ship couldn't do much damage to their larger vessels, but it could cause confusion. He studied the Red Fleet's formation and spotted their command ship, slightly larger than the others with communication arrays extending from its hull. Taking a deep breath, Alan pushed his engines to maximum power and charged directly at the command ship's blind spot directly below its sensor array. By the time they detected him, it was too late. Alan fired all his ship's limited weapons at the command vessel's communication equipment. The damage wasn't severe, but it disrupted the Red Team's ability to coordinate. "Enemy scout ship behind us," shouted one of the Red Team cadets, their voice coming through the open communication channel. The Red Fleet began to break formation, ships turning to deal with the unexpected threat. This was exactly what Alan had hoped for. Their neat formation dissolved into confusion. Meanwhile, Zarkthal's voice thundered through the Blue Team's comms. "Carter, what are you doing? Return to formation immediately." Alan ignored the order. He weaved his scout ship between the larger red vessels, drawing their fire and causing them to accidentally hit each other in their attempt to eliminate him. "Blue Leader, the enemy formation is breaking down," Alan finally responded. "They're vulnerable to a concentrated attack from your position." There was a moment of silence. Alan could almost feel Zarkthal's anger through the comm system. But the Kraxus cadet was also a tactical genius. He could see the opportunity Alan had created. "Blue Team, full advance," Zarkthal ordered reluctantly. "Target their flagship while they're disorganized." The Blue Fleet surged forward, taking advantage of the chaos Alan had created. Their coordinated fire quickly overwhelmed 2 of the Red Team's capital ships. Alan continued his evasive maneuvers, pulling more of the red ships out of position. His small scout could slip through gaps the larger vessels couldn't follow. Years of playing video games back on Earth had given him reflexes that the simulation's neural interface translated perfectly. In the observation booth, Admiral Kazan was now standing. "Remarkable," he said to the officer beside him. The human understood the gravitational patterns instinctively. On the simulation floor, Zarkthal was facing a difficult choice. His forces were now winning thanks to Alan's distraction, but the human was still disobeying orders and operating independently. "Carter," Zarkthal said, his voice tense. "Rejoin the fleet. We can finish them without your assistance." Alan checked his sensors. 3 red ships had broken off from the main battle and were closing in on his position from different directions. They had finally coordinated a proper response to his harassment. "I'm pinned down," Alan replied. "They've surrounded me." "Then your usefulness is at an end," Zarkthal said coldly. "Blue Team, focus on their remaining capital ships. Ignore the scout ship." Alan realized he had been abandoned. The 3 enemy vessels were closing in fast, their weapons charged. There was nowhere to run. Or was there? Alan studied his sensor readings again. The unusual movements in the asteroid field continued to create patterns that reminded him of ocean currents on Earth. If he could time it right, he pushed his engines beyond safety limits and aimed for a dense cluster of asteroids. The pursuing ships hesitated briefly, then followed. "What is the human doing now?" one of the admirals asked. "Something stupid," another replied. But Admiral Kazan remained silent, his eyes fixed on the small blue dot weaving through the asteroids. At impossible speeds, Alan focused completely on his flying. He could see the pattern ahead. A massive asteroid was about to collide with another, creating a temporary gap he could slip through. The gap would close immediately afterward. His ship shot through the gap just as the asteroids crashed together, behind him. The pursuing vessels couldn't stop in time. Two managed to veer away, but the third was caught between the massive rocks and eliminated from the simulation. "Incredible," whispered one of the instructors. Alan emerged from the asteroid field directly behind the red team's remaining ships, which were fully engaged with Zarkthal's forces. Their rear defenses were completely exposed. Without hesitation, Alan targeted the engines of their largest remaining vessel. His small weapons wouldn't normally damage such a ship, but with its shields focused forward, he found a vulnerable point. His shots hit perfectly, disabling the ship's engines. It began to drift, unable to maneuver in the battle. "Red Leader, I've lost engine power," a panicked voice called out on the open channel. Taking advantage of the confusion, Zarkthal's forces pressed their attack. The balance of the battle had shifted decisively. In a desperate move, the red team's commander ordered all remaining ships to focus fire on Zarkthal's command vessel. It was a suicidal strategy, but it might allow them to claim a partial victory by eliminating the blue leader. Alan saw the danger before anyone else. Multiple weapon signatures locked onto Zarkthal's position. The Kraxus Cadet's ship was powerful but couldn't withstand such a concentrated attack. Without thinking about their earlier conflict, Alan pushed his engines again and moved to intercept. His small scout ship placed itself directly between the incoming fire and Zarkthal's vessel. The simulation showed Alan's ship taking critical damage. Warning lights flashed across his control panel as systems failed one by one, but he had absorbed enough of the attack. Zarkthal's ship survived with minor damage and returned devastating fire that eliminated two more red vessels. "Carter, what are you doing?" Zarkthal demanded, genuine confusion in his voice. "Winning the battle," Alan replied simply as his ship's last systems failed. His screen went dark, indicating his elimination from the simulation. But as the neural interface disengaged, Alan could see the final moments of the battle on the main display. The blue team completed their victory, destroying the last red ships with ease. The simulation ended. The chamber was completely silent as the cadets removed their neural interfaces. All eyes turned to the observation booth where the admirals were reviewing the battle statistics. The lead instructor stepped forward. "Simulation complete. Blue team victory." He paused, consulting his datapad. "Special commendation to Cadet Carter for exceptional tactical innovation." Every head in the room turned toward Alan. He stood awkwardly beside his station, uncertain what to do. Admiral Kazan's voice came through the room's speakers. "I would like to speak with Cadet Carter and Cadet Zarkthal immediately. The rest of you are dismissed." As the other cadets filed out, some gave Alan curious looks, others seemed impressed. Nira, who had been on the red team, caught his eye and gave him a subtle nod of respect. Alan walked toward the observation booth, Zarkthal falling in beside him. The Kraxus cadet's face was unreadable, but tension radiated from his body. What would happen next, Alan couldn't imagine, but he had shown what a human could do. That was enough for now. Alan and Zarkthal stood at attention in front of Admiral Kazan. The Admiral's office was decorated with Kraxus military symbols and awards. A large window showed the stars and the curved edge of the Academy station. Admiral Kazan studied both cadets silently for a long moment. His scales were darker than his son's, and old battle scars marked his face. His yellow eyes moved from Zarkthal to Alan and back again. "An interesting simulation," the Admiral finally said. "One of the most unusual I have witnessed in 30 years of overseeing cadet training." Zarkthal kept his eyes fixed forward, not looking at either his father or Alan. Cadet Carter, Admiral Kazan continued. Explain your tactics. Alan swallowed nervously. Sir, I noticed patterns in the asteroid field that created safe passages. On Earth, we have ocean currents that behave similarly. I recognized the pattern and used it to my advantage. And your decision to disobey direct orders from your team leader? Alan hesitated, not wanting to criticize Zarkthal in front of his father. I saw an opportunity that required immediate action, sir. There wasn't time to debate strategy. The Admiral's expression didn't change. And your final action? Placing your vessel between my son's ship and enemy fire? Was that also tactical? No, sir, Alan admitted. That was instinct. In a real battle, protecting the command ship is essential to victory. Admiral Kazan turned to his son. And you, Zarkthal, what is your assessment of Cadet Carter's performance? Zarkthal's jaw tightened. The human showed disregard for chain of command and proper battle doctrine. His actions were undisciplined and reckless, yet effective, the Admiral noted. By chance, not skill, Zarkthal insisted. Craxus battle doctrine has proven successful for thousands of years. It doesn't need to be abandoned for improvisation. Admiral Kazan walked to the window, his back to both cadets. The Vex Confederation is growing stronger. Their latest ships use quantum targeting systems that can predict standard formations. Our last 3 engagements with them have resulted in heavy Craxus losses. He turned back to face them. We face an enemy that adapts quickly. Perhaps it is time we learn to adapt as well. The Admiral tapped a control on his desk, and a holographic replay of the simulation appeared between them. It showed Alan's scout ship weaving through the asteroid field, then disrupting the Red Team's formation. Unconventional thinking, Admiral Kazan said. Not Craxus thinking, but effective nonetheless. He paused the image at the moment when Alan moved to protect Zarkthal's ship. And loyalty, even to one who showed none in return. Zarkthal shifted uncomfortably. Father, You abandoned a teammate, the Admiral cut him off sharply. This is not the Craxus way. Victory at any cost is meaningless if we sacrifice our honor. The Admiral deactivated the hologram and sat behind his desk. Cadet Carter, you are dismissed. Report to my Chief Tactical Officer tomorrow at 0700. You will explain your methods to him in detail. Alan saluted, feeling Zarkthal's angry stare, as he left the office. News of what happened in the simulation spread quickly through the academy. By the time Alan reached the meal hall for dinner, it seemed everyone had heard about the human who outmaneuvered an entire enemy fleet. Nira waved him over to her table, where several other cadets from different species sat. Join us, Carter. Everyone wants to hear about your flying. Hesitantly, Alan took a seat. The other cadets peppered him with questions about his tactics and how he knew the asteroid field could be navigated. It wasn't that impressive, Alan said modestly. I just saw a pattern that reminded me of something from Earth. Not impressive? Said a 4-armed cadet from across the table. The instructors are already updating the simulation parameters. Because of you. They said no one had ever found that path through the asteroids before. A small green cadet leaned forward. Is it true you saved Zarkthal's ship after he ordered your abandonment? Before Alan could answer, a hush fell over the meal hall. Zarkthal had entered with his group of Craxus cadets. They collected their food and found a table at the far end of the room. Zarkthal's normally confident posture was stiff and uncomfortable. His father must have given him quite the lecture, Nira whispered. The Craxus take honor and loyalty very seriously. Being publicly saved by a human he tried to abandon, that's about the worst thing that could happen to a Craxus noble. The next morning, Alan reported to the Chief Tactical Officer as ordered. The officer, a veteran Craxus commander named Thex Cal, had him run through several simulations while explaining his thought process. Fascinating, Thex Cal said after the 3rd simulation. You don't follow any established doctrine at all. You simply react. I guess that's how humans fight, Alan said. We adapt to the situation. A useful skill, the officer admitted. The Vex have been countering our standard tactics with increasing success. Perhaps some human perspective could be valuable. Alan spent the rest of the day demonstrating his approach to various tactical challenges. By the afternoon, 3 more senior officers had joined to observe. They seemed particularly interested in his ability to spot patterns and predict enemy movements based on limited information. As Alan was leaving the tactical center, he nearly collided with Zarkthal in the corridor. Both cadets stopped abruptly. "Carter," Zarkthal said stiffly. "Zarkthal," Alan replied, unsure what to expect. The Craxus cadet looked uncomfortable. "My father has ordered me to thank you for your actions yesterday." Alan could tell the words were painful for Zarkthal to say. "You're welcome. Your leadership won us the battle in the end." Zarkthal's eyes narrowed. "Do not mistake this for friendship, human. My father may see some value in your chaotic methods, but I remain unconvinced." "Fair enough," Alan said with a shrug. "However," Zarkthal continued reluctantly, "I acknowledge that I misjudged your hawk courage. It was honorable of you to protect my ship, especially after I had abandoned yours." He extended his hand in the human gesture of a handshake, which he had clearly been instructed to do. "The Academy Combat Tournament begins next week. I expect to face you there." Alan shook the offered hand, feeling the Craxus cadet's strong grip. "I look forward to it." As Zarkthal walked away, Alan realized that he had earned something rare, not friendship or acceptance, but respect. Coming from the proudest species in the galaxy, that was no small achievement. Word continued to spread about the human cadet, who had shown such unusual tactics. Alan found himself invited to study groups by cadets who had previously ignored him. Instructors paid more attention to his questions in class. Even some of the Craxus cadets began to acknowledge him in the corridors, offering curt nods instead of dismissive stares. It wasn't friendship, but it was progress. As Alan prepared for bed that night, his datapad chimed with a new message. It was from Admiral Kazan, marked urgent. The message contained only a single line. "Report to Docking Bay 3 at 0500 tomorrow. Pack for a 3-day absence." Alan stared at the message, wondering what new challenge awaited him. Whatever it was, he would face it the human way, by adapting. Alan arrived at Docking Bay 3 exactly at 500 hours. He carried a small pack with 3 days' worth of supplies as instructed. The bay was mostly empty at this early hour, except for a sleek military shuttle and a small group waiting beside it. As Alan approached, he was surprised to see Admiral Kazan standing with 3 other officers. Even more surprising was Zarkthal, who stood stiffly at his father's side, also carrying a travel pack. "Cadet Carter, right on time," Admiral Kazan said. "Are you prepared for a field exercise?" "Yes, sir," Alan replied, trying to hide his confusion. "Good. This is not a standard Academy exercise. We are responding to a direct request from Fleet Command." The Admiral gestured to the shuttle. "Board and secure yourselves. I will brief you once we depart." Alan followed the officers onto the shuttle with Zarkthal behind him. They found seats in the passenger compartment while the pilot prepared for launch. Moments later, the shuttle detached from the Academy station and accelerated smoothly away. Admiral Kazan activated a holographic display in the center of the compartment. It showed a distant star system with several planets. "This is the Nexus system near the border with Vex Confederation space," the Admiral explained. 3 days ago, our listening post there detected unusual activity. A Vex scout fleet has been moving in patterns that do not match their standard patrol routes. The hologram zoomed in to show several ships moving in complex formations. Our analysts cannot determine their objective. They appear to be searching for something, but their movements make no tactical sense according to our understanding of Vex doctrine. The Admiral looked directly at Alan. "Cadet Carter, your unusual approach to the simulation yesterday suggested you might see patterns that our regular officers do not. You demonstrated an ability to recognize and predict movements that follow no established doctrine." Alan glanced at Zarkthal, who was staring straight ahead, deliberately not looking at him. "We will observe the Vex fleet from a cloaked position," the Admiral continued. "You will study their movements and tell me what you see. If we can understand their objective, we can determine whether they pose a threat." "Why is Cadet Zarkthal here, sir?" Alan asked. Admiral Kazan's expression didn't change. because despite his shortcomings in the simulation, my son remains one of our finest tactical minds. And because learning to work together despite personal differences is a lesson all officers must master. The journey to the Nexus system took 8 hours. During that time, Admiral Kazan had Alan and Zarkthal review all available data on Vex ship movements and tactical patterns. The two cadets worked at separate stations, not speaking unless necessary. When they arrived, the shuttle activated its cloaking technology and positioned itself near a large asteroid. From this hiding spot, they could observe the Vex ships without being detected. There they are, Admiral Kazan said, directing their attention to the main view screen. 5 Vex vessels moved through space in what appeared to be random patterns. They would accelerate in one direction, then suddenly change course, scan an area, then move on. They have been doing this for 3 days, one of the officers explained. No communications we can detect. No apparent objective. Alan studied the movements carefully. Something about them seemed familiar, but he couldn't place it. He asked for the records of their previous positions and had the computer plot their course over time. After an hour of review, Alan noticed something. "Sir, may I see the sensor data for the areas they've been scanning?" The officer provided the information. Alan overlaid it with the movement patterns and suddenly saw the connection. "They're following gravitational anomalies," he said. "Just like the patterns in the asteroid field in the simulation. They're searching along invisible paths." Admiral Kazan leaned closer to the display. "To what end?" "I'm not sure yet," Alan admitted, "but they're being very methodical. Each scan builds on the previous one." For the next several hours, Alan tracked the Vex ships, plotting their movements against sensor data. Eventually, he began to see a pattern emerge. They were moving inward along a spiral path following faint gravitational disturbances toward a central point. "They're looking for something specific," Alan said finally. "Something that's creating these gravitational ripples." Zarkthal, who had been quietly observing, suddenly spoke up. "Show me the projected center of their search pattern." Alan did so, revealing a point in empty space. "There's nothing there," one of the officers said. "Not that we can see," Zarkthal replied. He turned to his father. "Request permission to activate deep space sensors focused on that exact point." Admiral Kazan considered for a moment, then nodded. "Do it, but keep the energy signature minimal. We cannot risk detection." The shuttle's advanced sensors focused on the empty point in space. For several moments, nothing happened. Then a faint reading appeared. "There's something there," the sensor operator confirmed. "Very small, artificial, some kind of device." "A weapon?" Admiral Kazan asked. "Unknown, but it's definitely the source of the gravitational disturbances." Alan studied the data. "The disturbances are getting stronger and more frequent. Whatever it is, it's building up energy." Admiral Kazan's expression darkened. "This close to Alliance space? It could be a prelude to an attack." "Sir?" Alan said. "I don't think they planted it. They're searching for it just like we are. They detected the anomalies but don't know exactly where the source is." Zarkthal nodded reluctantly. "The human is right. Their search pattern indicates discovery, not retrieval." The Admiral made a quick decision. "We need to reach that device before they do. Pilot, plot an intercept course. Maintain cloak as long as possible." The shuttle began moving toward the hidden device. As they approached, the sensors provided more details. "It's definitely not Vex technology," the sensor operator reported. "The energy signature doesn't match anything in our database." "Unknown. Technology in disputed space," Admiral Kazan murmured. "This situation has become significantly more complex." They were halfway to the device when the sensors chimed a warning. "The Vex ships have changed course. They're converging on the location of the device." "They've found it. Time to intercept?" the Admiral asked. 4 minutes for us. 3 minutes for the nearest Vex ship." "They'll beat us there," Zarkthal said. Alan studied the tactical display, thinking quickly. "Not necessarily. Sir, those asteroids, to our port side, they have the same gravitational properties as the ones in the simulation. If we use them to boost our speed. Admiral Kazan looked at him sharply. That's incredibly risky with a real ship, Cadet. But possible, Alan insisted. I can plot the course. The Admiral glanced at his son. Surprisingly, Zarkthal nodded. I've reviewed the simulation records. What he did should work here as well. I recommend we try it. That earned a raised eyebrow from the Admiral. Very well. Cadet Carter, plot the course. Pilot, follow his instructions precisely. Alan quickly calculated the trajectory, using the gravitational eddies around the asteroids. To gain speed while maintaining the cloak, the shuttle swooped through the field, gaining velocity with each passing moment. They reached the device 30 seconds before the nearest Vex ship. A tractor beam locked onto the small object and pulled it into a containment field in the shuttle's cargo bay. Full retreat, Admiral Kazan ordered. Maximum speed back to Alliance space. As they fled, the Vex ships changed course to pursue, but the shuttle's head start and superior speed allowed them to escape. In the cargo bay, the officers studied the strange device, a small metallic sphere covered in unknown symbols that pulsed with energy. An incredible find, Admiral Kazan said, and an incredible mission. He turned to Alan and Zarkthal. You two worked well together when it mattered most. Zarkthal looked at Alan with new eyes. Your method of using the asteroids was effective. Perhaps there is something to be said for human adaptability after all. And perhaps there's something to be said for Krax's tactical knowledge. Alan replied. I couldn't have calculated the final approach without the formulas you showed me earlier. Admiral Kazan watched this exchange with satisfaction. This is why the Academy exists, to bring together the strengths of different species against common threats. When they returned to the Academy 3 days later, the story of their mission quickly spread, though the details remained classified. Alan found himself no longer an outsider, but a respected member of his class. Other cadets sought his advice on unconventional tactics, and instructors began incorporating his methods into their lessons. Even Zarkthal and his Kraxus friends treated Alan differently. Not as an equal, perhaps, but as someone worthy of acknowledgement. At mealtimes, Zarkthal occasionally joined Alan's table to continue their debates about tactical theory. As Alan prepared for his next class, he received a message on his datapad. Cadet Carter, your performance has been noted by Fleet Command. Upon graduation, you will be offered a position as Tactical Innovation Officer on the flagship. The galaxy is changing. We must change with it. Admiral Kazan. Alan smiled as he read the message. In just 1 week, he had gone from being mocked as a primitive human to earning a prestigious future assignment. The path ahead would not be easy, but he had proven what humans could offer the galaxy, not strength or advanced technology, but the uniquely human gift of adaptation.